Do you want a feel-good movie? Well, this ain't the one. What's going on, you guys? James here with another real review, and today I'm diving right into Amazon Studios' 7500, starring Joseph Gordon-Levitt. Yes, you heard that correctly. Joseph Gordon-Levitt. Where has this man been? Now, if this movie flew under your radar, yes, that was an airplane pun. Don't worry, you're not alone, because I knew nothing about this film until Amazon and the studio reps reached out to me offering me a link. So I'm really thankful, first of all, that I got to see a movie with Joseph Gordon-Levitt, because like I just said a minute ago, I missed the dude. And I'm going to get into what I liked about this movie and what didn't work so well. Now, before I get into all of that, guys, if you're finding yourself here at the channel for the very first time, welcome to Real James, where I talk about movies, TV shows, I review them, I react to them, and I break down all the news. So if you like that and you want more, go ahead and hit the big red button below and subscribe to the channel. Now, don't forget to tap on that bell as well, just to stay up to date with anything new. Guys, there's a ton of stuff happening on the channel. I'm going through Avatar: The Last Airbender for the very first time, and yes, it's quarantine, but I'm still getting a lot of cool movies to review, so I'm really thankful to the studios for that one. Don't forget to go ahead and smash that like button, because it does a ton to help out the channel, guys, and go ahead and comment below and let me know what you think of this movie when you see it, or if you've even heard of this film. A big thank you to all the real friends for just supporting the channel, showing love, and letting me know if I'm wrong sometimes on movies or if I'm right, because we are just growing this thing, and I'm so thankful for this community. Okay, enough of me talking about the channel. Let's get into 7500, the movie you guys came to listen to me talk about. This is the debut feature-length film for director Patrick Vollrath, and it's actually surprising to see Joseph Gordon-Levitt kind of attaching his name to this project, because he's done stuff like 500 Days of Summer. We know him for the Batman Nolan movies and Looper. Dude is on fire whenever he's on screen. I love seeing him in pretty much everything he's in. But for him to go that low budget approach and basically attach his name to a director's first feature-length film is pretty cool. It's very Joseph Gordon-Levitt, because he's a pretty humble dude for all intents and purposes from everything I've seen. But yeah, Joseph Gordon-Levitt's the only actor you're going to recognize here, most likely. Now, that's not to say there's not another standout performance or two. We'll get into that in the positives, but let's break down what this movie is if you're unfamiliar. It's a thriller, and it takes place basically in the cockpit of an airplane for the duration of the film, and it is definitely sad, infuriating. It's anxiety inducing. Basically, like I said in the intro, this isn't a film you sit down with and have your cold, or I guess hot, cup of whatever you're drinking and get comfortable and watch, because this ain't the movie for that. This is definitely a film that has no levity. It is always on edge, and the tension is riding 110% for the entirety of the film. And without spoiling anything, of course, this movie is basically about a pilot's aircraft from Berlin to Paris being hijacked by terrorists, and he has to fight to save the crew and everyone on board. It is definitely one of those films that's going to have you white-knuckling your chair in some sequences. And immediately I was actually pretty interested in the film, because it does this thing where it lingers on the passengers entering the aircraft, and I thought that was really cool, because it almost played to everyone's implicit bias. You know, it's a movie about terrorists that hijack an airplane, so you're kind of trying to pick out who's taking a long look at the cockpit, who's coming on the plane that looks a little timid, who looks nervous, and it's basically the viewer trying to play the role of detective and figure out which one is going to try to rush the cockpit. And yeah, it was a very interesting choice by the director to sit there and linger, but there's one thing in particular that stands out the most, and there's the fact that there's no score in this entire movie. It's silent for a large part of the film, and when it's loud, it's just sounds. There's no actual music or a composition to be found in this movie, and I thought that was a very interesting decision by Patrick Vollrath. So let's go ahead and dive right into the positives here, and leading that list is definitely Joseph Gordon-Levitt. He plays Tobias, an American pilot who has a girlfriend named Gertcha. She's played by Eileen Teze, and they have a kid together, so man, they're building a little bit with this character, and then eventually we get transitioned to Tobias's relationship with the captain Michael. The good thing about this film is Joseph Gordon-Levitt can pick up the movie when it otherwise seems less interesting. If Joseph Gordon-Levitt wasn't attached to this project, I'd imagine not many people would put eyes on it. So it is nice to see him in a lead role once again, because we haven't seen him in anything really big since Snowden in 2016. And if you're wondering, does Joseph Gordon-Levitt bring the sauce? For the most part, he does. It's a good performance. It's not great. I mean, really, it's not among his best. We've seen him in Looper and 500 Days of Summer. Those are performances I would consider some some of his best. And here, he really is putting on a performance that shows how he can like convey a wide range of emotions. He goes from being happy to being sad to being timid, helpless, to being compassionate, to being empathetic. It's very layered for a film that doesn't necessarily have a lot of layers, if that makes sense. Now, outside of Joseph Gordon-Levitt, if you're wondering, is there another performance that's notable here? There is to a degree. It almost comes a little too late in the game, but Omid Memar plays a terrorist on board this aircraft. His name is Vedat, and I love that this terrorist is conflicted in many scenes. I'm not going to say anything else, but he's conflicted about what to do, and I really think that there's a good yin and yang approach here. Yeah. That's about all I can say, because anything else would probably spoil this movie for you guys, but yeah, his performance was okay. Now, when it comes to the direction and the screenwriting, there really is no room in the script for this movie to make you smile. There's no levity in any scene. Even in the beginning of the movie, it opens with CCTV footage, which is basically surveillance footage of the airport, and it's like tracking individuals, and it's silent and it's very ominous, and you're almost drawn in, and then eventually you get put into the cockpit of the airplane. There's no room to breathe when they start introducing, oh, Tobias has a kid. Yeah, that's all good and fun, but you know they're on an airplane that's going to get hijacked, so what will the outcome be? Immediately, your mind, I mean, at least my mind, went to the worst case scenario. So there's nothing here that made me want to be optimistic. But that's okay, guys, because that was the objective from director Patrick Vollrath. He wanted you to feel tense 110% of the time, and I guess he hit the mark. And I did appreciate the cinematography here sometimes. I like those lingering shots. I really love the low lit areas of the plane that we were in, and I definitely enjoy the fact that we got so many different angles in the cockpit. So yeah, even though I was claustrophobic, I was kind of counting how many times they cut to different parts of the cockpit and how the heck they got the camera there. So it worked. And yeah, I would say that these are the strongest areas for the film. However, that didn't necessarily make the movie really good. It's pretty much just an okay thriller because it doesn't do enough to separate itself from the pack. We've seen plain thrillers like this before. We've even seen movies that dive past that thriller aspect and get into the drama of it all. But here is just straight up tension for 132 minutes. And there's a large chunk of that time in the beginning of the film that is a slow start. It is a burn that you might have to get yourself settled into. It builds the tension and the suspense, sure, but you almost wonder where the film is going. Is it going in circles here? When did they introduce maybe a different angle? Is there another character that's going to come about? So a lot of these questions are happening and things don't necessarily seem to be moving forward, but eventually the movie gets into the climax, which is everyone's rushing the front of the plane, at least the terrorists are. So you start to get into the action and that will, grab you. But then of course it drops off a little bit more towards the end again. So this movie does this thing where it goes in circles a little bit and you have to, ride with it to get to the action. Some people will like it and I know some people won't. Me personally, I can appreciate a good slow burn, but I didn't feel like the payoff was that great, honestly. However, I feel a lot of the more tense moments in this film would have benefited from more relationship building. I would love to see more moments between Tobias and Gertrude, his girlfriend. I would love to see more moments between the plane's captain, Michael, and Tobias. And then by the time the end credits ran, I really thought, did this movie kind of separate itself from the pack? Is it just an average thriller, or did it do anything to make it super memorable? And it really didn't. So those are basically the words I would use to describe this movie, is that it's not as memorable as I probably would have loved it to be by the time the credits ran at the end. There wasn't a singular moment that I could tell you stuck with me overnight, and sometimes, yes, movies aren't going to be doing that for everybody, but I would have liked this movie to kind of, again, separate itself from the pack, and it didn't really do that. So overall, 7500 really is a decent thriller with a good performance by Joseph Gordon-Levitt. The thing is, it doesn't necessarily hang with the rest of 2020, and that's saying something because this has been a light year for movies, and here 7500 falls in the middle of the pack. And outside of JGL, there's really nobody else I could tell you had a really notable performance. I mean, yes, Omid Memar was good, but his performance came too late in the film. It was almost too little too late, as the old saying goes. By then, the veil covering the rest of the film was pretty much peeled back, and I understood exactly what was going to happen, pretty much to the T, and yeah, it wasn't necessarily surprising from that point onward. I almost felt like, okay, will this movie introduce something fresh, or is it just going to go the route I feel like so many of these thrillers go, and it pretty much did the latter. Now, by no means is this a bad debut for director Patrick Vollrath. I actually am really excited to see what he does next, and he seems to have a good eye for shot selection. I mean, the cinematography here again was pretty darn good, and the sequencing of shots in some moments when the action was at its peak really was fun. And I mean, wow, maybe not fun, let me not do that, because again, this movie is not a feel-good film, but I felt claustrophobic in some scenes, and I wanted more of that instead of some of these lesser scenes towards the middle and end of the film where it just almost felt like it was quiet for no good reason and not much was really going on screen. If anything, I think 7500 could have been a lot more memorable if they would have gotten another actor in the mix earlier in the film. Why didn't they give Omid Memar like more screen time than they did? Yeah, they gave him a decent chunk at the end, but imagine his performance, when you see the movie of course, imagine his performance for maybe 50 minutes. That would have been pretty cool, or maybe even 40. I think that you give him a bigger chunk of this pie and the movie is pretty much elevated even more so, because his performance was not bad at all. But again, 7500 really is one of those movies that you'll throw on Amazon Prime Video, you'll sit down, spend an hour or so with it, and then you might forget about it the next day, and that's pretty much the best way to sum up this film for me. Although, if this is the movie that gets Joseph Gordon-Levitt acting again consistently, I'm here for it. Alright, let's do it. Because I think I speak for everyone when I say I miss that dude's acting. Alrighty guys, well there you have it. That's my take on 7500, which hits Amazon Prime Video June 18th. They moved it up one day because they wanted Juneteenth to be its own day with no new releases dropping. I love that move. Again, if you haven't already, go ahead and hit the big red button below and subscribe to the channel, and tap on that bell as well so you don't miss out on any more reviews just like this one. Go ahead and smash that like button because it does a ton to help out the channel, and comment below and let me know when you see this movie which performance was your favorite, and do you think it's worth your time? Alrighty guys, I have so many more movies queued up, so again, thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you at the next screening.